Hey, friends of Two Crones with a Mic, we're back, and I am back. I was gone last time, and thank you, Indira, for holding down the fort by yourself. And
Never doing that again.
it was a wonderful episode. I saw it. I watched it a few days later. It was great. And so, if you guys haven't watched it, please go out and do so. Today, we have another special guest with us. So, we're so excited to have Noelle with us. It is really hard to get a hold of her. She's such a busy and successful businesswoman. She runs several businesses. She's a psychic medium. Am I correct? Are you a
Yes, yeah.
medium? Okay, so I just want to make sure I get it all right. But
Mhm.
she just has so many talents, and we'll get into that a lot more. But we'll have Indira do our short meditation real quick for us, as usual.
Absolutely. Thank you. I am excited to have Noelle here today. So let us, if it is safe for you, if you're driving the car, please don't do this. But for everyone else, if it is safe for you, let's just take a moment to lower or close our eyes, whatever feels most comfortable, and just move into this absolute precious present. This moment is the only moment that exists. This breath is the only breath that is promised in this time. Just feel that truth. Leave behind any worries and cares of yesterday or tomorrow. Let your to-do list sit there unconcerned about, untouched. Let us just stay in this precious present for the next hour or so as we learn about one of the greatest gifts that we possess and that we can offer ourselves and others. Take a nice deep breath, really grounding into this moment. And exhaling, rolling our shoulders down and back, and just being in this moment. And as we move forward for the next hour or so, we open our hearts and our minds to really listen, not just to the words that are said, but to our own hearts and our own minds, asking, is this mine to do? How might I live spherically that I may experience so much more of life? And any other questions that may come up for you in the next hour. One more deep inhale, hold it at the top. And exhale. And we are present. And before we begin, I do want to give a possible trigger warning because I am going to tell the story here in a little bit of some of my family history. And I always want to do that because Noelle, she knows this, but I don't think she will ever understand the depth that that she helped heal my family from on both sides. I don't know that she will completely ever understand how beautifully she transformed my life and my family's life. But I want to tell the story of that, and that involves telling some of the icky stuff as well. So thank you and welcome, Noelle. Bettina, do you? No, Noelle, tell us a little bit about you. Just what do you want us to know about you?
I am a mother of two. I am a tarot reader, medium. I own a nail salon, and I am a fitness coach.
And
Yeah.
your fitness business intrigues me because you, to me, and I don't know how Bettina feels, but to me, you are just this darling little fairy-like energy, and you are a badass. What is your belt level and in what form of martial arts?
Oh, it's so funny. So I'm still a white belt in jujitsu. I've been doing jujitsu for almost 3 years. I was actually just joking today that I may hold the record of having white belt for the longest amount of time. I've been pregnant during my journey, and I didn't stop. I kept going to class. I kept being there. So I've had some, wrenches thrown into my fitness journey, in particular jujitsu. But it's always been my passion. I have a black belt in Taekwondo, and I did that when I was younger, and then it just really transitioned into jujitsu, and it's just a passion and a hobby of mine.
Cool.
Also coach people in fitness as well as doing amazing. And your nails are remind me, because you and I talked, I told you that I was really allergic to like the acrylics, and you said we don't do acrylics
Nope.
because of the chemicals. What kind of nails do you guys do?
Yeah, so we're a gel only salon, so we can still do enhancements. We still do, length and structure and everything like that, just with gel only. So everything is done with gel. We try to make it like a fume-free salon, just a place where you can, it's more so of just a safe space, and you just happen to get your nails done while you're there.
I love it. And I've seen, and that's how actually one of the ways I met you was one of your clients came to me from my school, and her nails are amazing. Every time I see her, they're phenomenal. Bettina got to meet her. She went with us to the crystal show.
Yeah, but I also seen the nails. I mean, what you do like on Facebook. And guys, if you're in the Kansas City area and you want to get your nails done and you want them perfect and wonderful and just like exquisite, you have to go to see Noelle at her salon.
Thanks, guys.
And if you are even like me and you're allergic to the acrylics, but you still want some, because mine, I'm menopausal and my nails have thinned out. And I actually showed my nails to you at one of our readings. I was like, am I able to do anything with these? Because they're so thin and they're so ridgy. And you're like, I got you, I can do this. But until I can finish doing massages, I can't get nails.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You definitely live spherically. And I love that. You are the example. And
so
one
many
of your
talents,
kids, and tell us the ages of your kids, because you just had a baby, 5 months ago?
Yes, yeah, he's almost 5 months. So I have an almost 5-month-old and a 6-year-old. So it's been a lot. I think part of the journey where I'm at right now is being, back to consistency. You don't get that when you're, freshly postpartum and you have a newborn. There's absolutely nothing consistent. The only consistency is that you are just this feeding train for this child. And after that, right now I'm in this journey now where I am really just trying to find this who I am again, this new version of me, and just connecting back to my body.
Wonderful.
Bettina, how did you meet Noelle?
So I was working fairs for a couple of years, and Noelle was one of the other vendors there, and she was just like in the room with us, and she is just such a wonderful presence. I mean, it's just, you just cannot not notice her. I don't know how to kind of express it, but Noelle is just like I mean, don't get me wrong, Noelle, because you're like very petite, but you have this phenomenal presence in the room where you just cannot not stand out. It's not possible. And Noelle does mediumship readings at those fairs, and she always has a line in a waiting list. She's just so good at it. She's so authentic and real, and she's the real deal. So if you ever get to see her or meet her or go to one of these fairs where she works or has a booth, make sure to sign up early, because you will probably not get a chance if you're not there early. So she's a wonderful, wonderful medium.
Thank you, Bettina. And
you're welcome.
Back at you, because you were one of the first people that got to read for my husband.
Oh,
and
okay.
He's not somebody, he doesn't get tons of readings. He's just, he likes to be on his own. And so he still talks about your reading that you did for us and for him.
You.
And he loved it. And so he's always been so grateful for that reading that you gave him.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I love all of this. This is good. This is so good. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So yeah, that's how I met her.
Yeah. And I met her the same way, except I never when we were at the fairs, we're always so busy. Everyone's busy. I would purposely close down for when you would go to do a shared gallery with another, somebody else in the fairs.
Mhm.
And I would go in, and very rarely did anything come through specifically for me, but it piggybacked. And piggybacking is a term that we use. Do you want to tell us what piggybacking is? You probably have a
Yeah,
better instruction.
piggybacking a lot is where, you'll get somebody might come through, but these messages are being delivered for everybody as well, or even for multiple people. So you could have, a couple spirits come through, a couple energies come through, and and their maybe their message is very similar, or they're wanting to deliver something that's similar to that. So you kind of come across it when I'm like, oh, okay, I have, so and so, and they're this, they're that. And then, like, three people raise their hands, and they keep raising their hands every time I'm trying to clarify who it is. So that's where you kind of get some of this piggybacking, where maybe somebody might want to also deliver a similar message of another energy.
And do we find that because maybe there's so many people in the room and there's so many energies wanting to get through that they're like, hey, we're going to streamline this process and give the same message, but it belongs to these three people. It's like a spiritual streamlining, if you will. Is that pretty much how they do it and why they do it?
Yeah, I mean, I would guess so. I
Okay.
just let them do their thing. I let them control it. What I'll do is, I have very much been working on just trying to get the one person though. So I'll be like, okay, well, let's narrow it down here. Let's narrow it down here, just so we can have one reading for one person. But that still doesn't mean that message isn't being delivered for other people in the room.
Right. I learned about piggybacking watching John Edward.
Hmm.
And he would always say, if this message also belongs to you, take it.
Yes.
Like it may, this message may only be for Bettina in this moment, but if it resonates with you, take it. And
Yes.
I take a notepad. And so in anytime you did, and I sat in on at least 4 of your galleries, at least I think there was at least 4. I would jot down anything that also resonated with me, even though I didn't get individual ones. And I always kind of put that up because I'm like, I'm an employee here right this weekend. This is for the people who bought a ticket, But I
Right.
always wanted to go in because I'm fascinated by how you work and how like spot on you are.
Yeah.
Like you are like like the phrase from My Cousin Vinny, you are dead on balls accurate, right? Like that's
I love that movie.
that's what you are. And that leads me to the story of how I really got a reading with you. And so what Bettina doesn't know is there for a while I was volunteering to work their fairs, like running the front desk or as a volunteer, because I wanted to show her that I supported her fairs. And also April had gone through my school. And even though I was, getting out of the fair circuit, I've kind of retired from the fair circuit, I still wanted them to know that I supported them. So I'm like, oh, I'll just come work at your front desk for a little bit. So I sat there and worked with her daughter one, I think it was a
August.
Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you happened to be there, Noelle. And I'm walking around after my shift and I'm like, oh, I really want a reading, but you were super booked that day. And I was like, I'm not going to stick around. And I actually went home, went to bed, got up the next morning, and I was at church. And I was like, I got to go back. It's time to go back. And so I drove back and I thought I'm probably going to have a long list because, as Bettina said, sign up early because you may not get.
Yeah.
And I got there at noon, about 12:30. And you had no one. And I sat down and I said, I need a reading from you. And I will never forget your statement was so funny. You were like, why? There is nothing I can tell you that you can't tell yourself.
It was so intimidating having you sit down and like I've seen you as see you and Bettina, like you guys are the veterans. You guys have been doing these fairs, and I'm like, for me.
and yes, you, because I see you as this amazing, gifted talent So I was like, yeah, and spirit kept saying, she's going to give you the message you need today. She's going to give you that
Yeah.
message.
Mhm.
Something that my mind and my heart was blocked to. I
Mhm.
couldn't have heard it for myself. And so I sat down and you began to speak, and I paused you for a second and I said, I am going to apologize in advance because I believe that you are about to encounter some pretty icky stuff, because you brought up my two dads, right? My bio dad and my adopted dad. And I was like, oh shit. She's going to see all up into my business, and
Mhm.
this is not going to be good for, oh God, I'm going to have to get her a tranquilizer when she's done. And you were like 6, 7 months pregnant. Like you were so pregnant. And I'm like, I hate that the baby has to hear all this and see, and I'm having all this guilt. But at the same time, like my butt was glued to your chair. I could not get up. And so you began to, the first thing you did is you're like, your stepdad is here and he is like encouraging your bio dad to speak. And I was like, God. And then you're like, and there's a whole bunch of family here. And you're describing the family. And then my bio dad begins to talk and he owned what he did to me. And the way that you did it so gently, you're so gentle. And this is why this is so key to this work, is understanding how
Mhm.
to be gentle. You're
Yes.
like, if I said to you that you had sustained some abuse and or neglect, does that make sense to you? And I was like, yeah. And then you're like, and if I said to you that you had sustained some pretty severe emotional and physical abuse, does that make sense to you? And I'm like, yep. And that's about that time that I was like, I think I owe you an apology for what you're about to dive into. And then the third one was, if I said to you that you had endured some pretty significant violence and sexual abuse, would that make sense to you? And I said yes. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is because, so you were very gentle. And then you stopped and you said, Archangel Michael is covering you in a cloak of labradorite to keep you safe from anything that we're about to go into, any psychic attacks and all of that. And you're like, it's gorgeous. It's this gorgeous cloak. And by the way, I call on that cloak a lot after that, after I realized that was a situation I could do. And then you began to explain that my father did what he did. He orchestrated a rape and my murder, which then became a near-death experience for me. And he did it because he didn't know any better, and I knew that. I knew that his father had tortured him as a child. And so he orchestrated that. And you said something that really resonated with me, and I don't think very many people will understand this, but if you didn't know my dad, you wouldn't know that this is actually true. You said, it's weird, but he felt like he was doing you a favor, because in his mindset, all women and girls were good for was sexually abusing. And so he felt like if he did it once and ended your life, he was keeping you from living a lifetime of that. And that made sense to me. Like that was like, I get it now, because that is how my dad thought, right? And I have said that to a few people and they're like, oh, hell no, no, that cannot be. And I was like, no, that makes perfect sense. My dad, there was a semblance of love in him, enough to not want me to have to live that lifetime. And I chose differently. When I did leave my body, I was like, nope, send me back. And I did endure quite a bit of that through my life, but I've healed it. I've worked on it and I've healed it. One of the other things that you said that really, really stuck with me was that his mother, my grandma, was standing in the corner and she was sobbing because he was owning it. And you said that you saw this darkness lifting out of him, right? And she was sobbing because she said for the first time ever, she gets to comfort her baby boy. Because even though he was an old man when he died, in his lifetime, my grandfather would never allow her to comfort him when he had like fallen and skinned his knee, or had a wound or something, she was never allowed to comfort him. And that set up that stage for him to never truly be comforted by a woman. And the last thing I'm going to share about this, because this brings in all of this, is that you saw my granddad standing in the corner as well. And he was still very dark. He had this dark energy. And it was interesting because you then said to me, but I don't necessarily believe in that. I'm like, I don't either. I don't know what this is. So I want to bring all of this up because I want to talk about the scary stuff first, the scary part of being a medium. And it's not really scary,
Right.
but there is this fear that we all have in this world. We start up, and it's because I think it's because of Hollywood. Personally, I blame Hollywood. So talk about this. Anything that I just brought up, but in particular, let's undemonize, or the lower energy. Let's talk. Go ahead. I'm going to step back.
So something that you brought up that I actually do really want to address first is I do have a history of, me personally, I have a history of sexual assault, and also because of that, that has obviously, just like anybody, has shaped my life quite a bit. In addition to that, I have a history of working in a shelter for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and I'm a former police officer. So lots of these experiences have helped me work with victims and have these conflict resolutions, have given me training to deal with these types of things. If you are wanting to be a medium, if you are wanting to read tarot, I highly encourage doing extra training that is going to be working with victims. It would be very naive to say that these things are not going to come up. If these things do come up and you do want to be a reader or medium for other people, I believe it's necessary that if you don't have the appropriate training, that you need to have some resources for other people to have access to. Just because obviously I didn't come into the fair that day expecting all of this information and expecting that load, to be put on our table. And I'm so grateful for my history, because I felt like, oh, all right, I'm changing my mindset, because not only right now am I a medium, I am now speaking with a victim and survivor. So it changes how you handle a situation, and it's very, very important to get extra training on that.
I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I do that actually when I teach a class. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No, go ahead,
anybody. When I do Akashic Record classes, when I teach people, this is one of the points I really stress, because when somebody comes to you, you don't know what you're going to get, but you better believe that you get people who are in distress. Their situations are serious. It's divorce, children are drug addicts, or they have died. And I always tell my students, it's not just about getting the information from spirit. It's also how you handle the reading, and you better practice that, because that's really, really important. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, 100%. Especially for you two who are educators. I'm sure you allow and hold space for your people you're training, of like, hey, this is important, because I think we think this stuff is so cool, being a medium and reading tarot, and it is, but we also forget that we're dealing with people's trauma, with their inner child, with their lives, and that's a really big deal. And it's an honor to be allowed to hold that space for them, but it's also very important that I'm educated and understand how to handle the situation.
Absolutely.
So especially when I'm reading in a gallery, and I do feel like, let's say, Indira, that all of this for some reason were to come up in a gallery, I actually wouldn't read this in a gallery. I would stop that and say, please, let's go further in. And I think what that does for people is, I do think that they believe this is something like evil and negative, and something where I'm like, oh, this is, and I think they let their, imagination run wild with why I'd want to do that separately. But it's also something that's too traumatic to be brought up into a group setting.
It also feels like I don't know that I would be prepared for an entire group. Like that day, I was very vulnerable that day. I didn't know what was coming through. And if I had to do that in a group setting, I I probably would have shut it down.
Mhm.
And I've seen you in a group setting where you said, I'm gonna put this on pause.
Mhm.
I'm gonna finish this big gallery, and then I want to step outside with you
Mhm.
and do this quietly in the hall. I've seen you do that a couple of
Mhm.
times, and I understand that what is happening, because I teach it too in my classes. Like
Mhm.
you got to be prepared,
Mhm.
and sometimes you have to stop and say, "Are you sure this is the road you want to go down?" Even in a private,
Yes.
because you did say that to me, Noelle. One time you said, there's some really heavy stuff coming. Are you sure this is the road we're going to go down? And I was like,
Mhm.
yep, this is why I'm supposed to be here. But I've seen you do that. And I personally know exactly what you're doing. You are giving them the privacy that they need to process something very deep, very profound, very painful, and not having to do it in a giant group setting where everybody's like, oh my God. Because if anybody had heard even a quarter of my story in a group setting, can you imagine? Like,
Yeah.
we would have completely derailed the whole group setting.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's
That's
not
what
what
the
you're there.
focus, right. That's
Yeah.
what the focus would have been on, and everybody would have had questions, and everybody would have had, and it's just, we kind of, that's a whole other level of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Very
agree.
So
cool.
then, and then in addition to that, that's where it was like, it's so cool. And I'm sure you guys experience this of every time there's always like new stuff. Sometimes we're doing a reading and I'm like, wow, it's new. I mean, it's never ends. There's always fun stuff you're learning and growing. And, um, like you had mentioned, I don't necessarily believe in evil.
Mhm.
And I think that I am a very small population because a lot of people don't. As a human, it's really easy to. We want to believe in evil. We want to believe that what your father had done was pure evil, almost to the point where it is unhumane, like where we take their humanity out of it and make it, demonic, or we make it something that. And it's like, humans are capable of anything. This is not something where we have to separate from that, from who he is or was. But let's actually go dive deeper into his life experiences and how he was raised. And that's what was brought up in the reading as well, is
Yes.
his whole life was brought up to have this mentality. And it's really hard for someone to understand who was raised maybe in a loving and healthy home.
Mhm.
or,
Or a law enforcement home like you. Law
exactly.
enforcement is very much like lock him up and throw away the key.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
so we want to believe, as humans, we want to believe there is a monster.
Yes.
We don't want it to believe that anybody we walk across is, or anybody that we know is capable of these things. We want it to be a monster and something separate. And so that's where, again, this is more of the unknown, and it starts to build fear, and then we want it to be something else, when really it's actually very simple. And it's not anything where it is this monster under the bed. So for some people that could be really scary. But if we start taking that fear away and understanding that this is just a low vibration, this is just negative, not necessarily evil.
Mhm.
And we all choose, I personally believe we choose our paths, we choose these lives that we're going to be living.
Yeah.
Our souls know what's going to happen, in this lifetime.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
if we already know this, then we can kind of take that fear away.
Mhm.
And this journey for me of understanding this like evil and negative and low vibrational energy, but making it more human, was from my personal experience of having to truly forgive my abuser. And
Mhm.
when I completely forgave my abuser, I actually understood what true forgiveness and love really was. Because I can do readings for people, and they can say, yeah, I've forgiven them. And I'm like, have you? And they're like, yeah, I don't wish
Yeah.
them the best. I hope that they get what they deserve. And I'm like, we're not quite at forgiveness yet.
Right.
And
And we're surface level forgiveness right now. We haven't got into the deep stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And that's where we get to this
Yeah.
true love. And that's why it's just so hard to wrap our minds around, of me saying, if I were to tell somebody, yeah, Hitler, it just went off to the other side and is learning his own lessons, and he had a purpose on earth. There was a reason that these people who are quote unquote evil or doing awful things.
Mhm.
It's a positive and negative. It's a yin and yang. It's how
Mhm.
it's what we already know is it's very human.
Yes.
And does that make sense? I don't even know if I'm making
It makes,
sense.
No,
yeah,
you
it makes,
totally,
yeah,
totally makes
totally.
sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. It brings up, I wanted to support what you're saying with my experience. So when I very first remembered, because my brain, my mind said, "Oh, you shan't remember this. This is too hard for you." But I was exhibiting behaviors that indicated that something really bad had happened to me when I was a kiddo. But I couldn't remember them. And so I like deep dive into therapy and cognitive behavioral and all that. And then something told me to start seeing this shamanic practitioner, and
Mhm.
that is where I was able to see what happened to me and begin the process of healing. Now, that was in my early 30s. I'm now in my early 50s. And so, healing, the thing to remember is healing is not linear, it continuously cycles through. So, at the time, I was in a place where I could like surface level forgive my dad. Like I was there. And then more stuff would come up around it, my behaviors, my belief systems about myself. And I am not even kidding you. Friday in EMDR, more stuff came up around not this dad, but it was of the cycle of healing. And I have to go deeper. The day that you told me, that was around my 52nd birthday, because it was that weekend. The day that you told me that my dad had owned what he did took me to a whole other level of forgiveness, to that really deep, like, because intellectually I knew that my dad had experienced horrible things at the hands of his father and that my grandmother could not stop him. And so I had a level of forgiveness, but when he finally owned it, it took me to a whole level of peace around it. And when you said, and I know this sounds crazy, y'all, I do, but when he said, I really thought it was the kindest thing for you, like a mercy killing, if you will, when an animal is in so much pain that you don't want it to sit there. And my father did not want me to experience the day in and day out pain of that. He had done that to his sisters
Mhm.
for decades.
Mhm.
He had done that to his wives, to his children. He did not want me to experience that.
Mhm.
And so that took me to a whole other level of healing. And then again, this Friday, I went there again in EMDR, and I've been processing it, since yesterday. I wasn't even sure I was going to be here. My head hurt so bad, but Spirit's working through me to be here.
Yeah.
So you bring through, even though it was painful, for both of us, I think, to be sitting there. You didn't squirm, but you had a big baby in your belly, and I don't think you could have squirmed if you wanted to. And I think I was just frozen, like, oh my God, I don't think I can get up. I don't think I can get up, but at the same time, you and I came to some very deeper understandings. And I love that you brought in this. We are always learning new stuff when we do this work, because people think that we come in to do this work, we're masters.
Mhm.
And the thing about getting like a master's level education or a PhD level education is you only have the degree. You don't have the experience, and you don't have all the knowledge. You just have a piece of paper that says you read the books and you passed the test.
Mhm.
It doesn't say that you now have the field experience. So doing this work, you indicated you get field education every single time you do a reading.
Mhm.
That all of that is that healing, not just for yourself and not just for others, but then when you combine it, it's that collective healing, that collective understanding. And thank you for not demonizing my father. If it's anybody's responsibility to demonize my father, it's mine, and I refuse to do it. And this is something that Bettina and I have talked about, because we talk about saving the children. We talk about saving the children from trafficking, human trafficking. And I told her, I said, I cannot demonize the people who do this. I refuse. I can't, because they're human beings,
Mhm.
and we do not know their story and what twisted their brains and their minds to make them behave in that way. And they deserve as much compassion as the victims do.
Well, it's so interesting you bring that up because I, for a long time, and actually even in college, I worked with some organizations that raised awareness for human trafficking and sexual assault, and that's actually something I'm also very passionate about is
Wow.
raising awareness for human trafficking. And I have been so passionate about it. Like I do know that my life is going to come back around to that at some point, and I've done some um, past life regressions with somebody I trust and love. And she, I have a past life where I was a trafficker, where
Wow.
I abused children.
Yeah.
And I have to remember that we are all one. We are all from one collective as one. And
Yes.
Yeah.
we all like to say like we don't judge other people, but yes you do.
Yes, you do.
Yes you
Yes, I
do.
do. Yes, I do.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So once we start having more of this self-awareness that we're not perfect and that we are judgmental and that we do see these people as evil and wrong and yada yada, we can correct ourselves as we live our lives.
Mhm.
So as we see somebody where we're like, oh, they deserve the worst, they deserve this and that, who are you to say what they do and do not deserve? Because a lot of these people I've recognized are also Christians.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what did Jesus do? He hung out with criminals and prostitutes and people who were and murderers. You know, so who are we to say we should be only doing with love? Now this comes back to healing, and it's not easy. It's not like we should just love or our abusers. That takes time.
Mhm.
But the love and healing and forgiveness is more for me, not for him.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then that way, as a collective, I can start helping others by just loving them.
Yes.
That's in the grand scheme of things, that's really why we're here. Because I personally believe that if we just keep throwing these people away, telling them they're evil, locking the key away, um, then they're gonna come back in the next life not any better. We're not
Exactly.
helping the collective. We're hurting other people. And I know it's so awful what these people are doing, but it's also important that we keep into perspective that we're all
Yeah.
human.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not like there was just somebody who was raised in a happy, healthy family that was just one day, you know what? I think I'm going to traffic children. Like
Yeah.
Right.
it's not
Exactly.
how it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
Well,
funny. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Bettina.
It's so funny that you bring this up about, how we have to heal, because just this morning, while I was like cleaning up my kitchen, waiting for Indira to come over, I had this thought because a couple of weeks ago, we had Christy on our show and she was channeling an alien named Ramadir. And I remembered in that moment that we asked about, why are some people so evil and why do they do certain things? And then what he said was because they're young souls. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden this morning, while I was just doing things, I was thinking about that specific, what they said. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, maybe now I am this old soul and maybe now I'm here to heal or help heal people. But I must have been a new soul at some point or a
Mhm.
young soul. So I was probably somebody in
Yeah.
some life at some point who did really awful things to other people or other beings. And that's when it really hit me. And I'm like, oh my God, I was one of them. So when you judge, people who are, or the new souls that are here right now, it's like you're really judging yourself because you were a new soul at some point and
Yes.
you did awful things because
Mhm.
you were here to learn. It's a
Yeah.
school. This planet is a school,
And you
Yes.
weren't
you know?
aware
Yeah.
that you were hurting the collective. You weren't aware that
Yes.
you were hurting. When you hurt one, you hurt them all. It's,
Mhm.
Martin Luther King Jr. was very aware of that when he said, when one experiences injustice, we all experience
Mm-hmm.
injustice, because we are all part of that same vibration. We're all part of that same experience.
Mhm.
You brought up Jesus a little bit ago, and Jesus, the first quote that I always think of with Jesus is, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do."
Yes.
And forgive them doesn't mean, yeah, I forgive you and I'm throwing you away, and
Mhm.
and throwing the key away and locking you up and getting you out of sight, out of mind. Forgiveness
Mhm.
is not out of sight, out of mind. It is facing it every single day
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
saying, I forgive you on a deeper level. I forgive you on a deeper level. I forgive you on a deeper level, and allowing it to cycle through. And that is the healing that you do in mediumship. That's the healing you do in Akashic records. That's the healing you do in this work. You had brought up earlier that people, when they come into this, they think, oh, this is going to be really fun. I'm going to be a medium. And so Bettina and I've had hours long conversations about how light work is not light. Light work is taking the light into the darkness. It is hard. It is gritty. It is painful. It is getting knocked on your ass time and time again, standing up, spitting out a tooth and saying, let's go another round.
Yeah.
Because it is hard work. People think that it's because they admire people who do this work. They think, oh, well, I just wanted to give these really cool messages, and they are cool messages, but they're hard, deep messages.
Yep.
And this work is not for the light of heart. Not saying that not everybody can do it. You just have to be devoted to understanding that it's going to take you deeper and deeper into the darkness to be that light. And you did it that day, Noelle. You showed up for me, and I will forever be. And I know my family is grateful. I like you. I'll say it again. You will never know the depth that you healed my family lineage through me and through them. For example, my grandma. But so where we were was part of the healing came from me, that I got to visualize my grandmother comforting my father, because my father, his mother never got to hug him. His mother never got to comfort him. And those are also those stories of healing. So yeah, you do as a light worker, you are the light in the darkness, but sometimes you also just get to bring that light out where there is light. I have very fond memories of my grandma, and it makes me happy that she wept tears of joy that she got to finally comfort her baby boy, even though he was like 80, and that. So, do you want to talk about some messages of healing and hope that happen too in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's so beautiful about this work in general, is I think that most of these messages are a lot about people who are allowing that healing process to happen, no matter who it was that passed, because we have people people who come to me, and I could just tell they're wanting to hear from somebody so bad. And what I feel like is a general consensus, like just what I've even read from other mediums and what I talk about with other mediums as well, is that if the sitter is not ready, or if they're still in a very deep place of grieving, a lot of times the person that they're grieving doesn't come through. It's almost like if they're not they're not ready, in a sense. And so that's like also a good message for people, where it's like, just focus on the grieving process, and your loved ones will always be there. They'll always come. It's just when they feel you're ready to hear those messages. And that was kind of like, I forgot exactly why too, because Indira, when you came to me that day, I was like, no, I'm glad you didn't come yesterday. Maybe I was having an off day, or I don't know what it was. It was kind of like
busy, and you were starving. Like you had to you were so busy. Mary was sitting with you. I love Mary. Do a huge shout out to our Mary, who sits with you. I think she's your cousin, right? Is that right?
She's a friend of mine.
She's a friend of yours. And I adore her. And but when I stopped to inquire the day before, and she's like, she's booked for the day and she really needs to eat. I think that you had not gotten a lot of food. Yeah. And you did feel like it was a slightly off day, even though I can't imagine you having an off day message wise, but maybe your energy was just real low. Because I did mention to you that I'd gone, like, all of a sudden I just hit this wall, and I'm like, yeah, I can't even stay. I got to go home and go to bed. And I did. And I slept like hours.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think you said the same thing.
Exactly. I feel like that day that where I had you, I was like, I was ready. I was in the headspace to handle that. And especially something like that, like spirit just knows. It's so much greater, and they're always like ready. Hey, we think you're ready now. This is a good time. They throw you things when you're ready. Even when we feel like we can't handle it, or if it feels too heavy, they wouldn't throw it at us if we weren't ready. And it's up to us to be like, oh, all right, let's do this. So yeah, that's why, you know, a lot of these messages, that's part of why I love doing this, is just being able to, I'm not doing the magic like they're doing the magic. I just get to be this like space and this translator. And they're the ones who like came to me, they sat down, they're ready to do the work. And I'm just like
You're the
helping.
conduit. You're the
Yeah,
hollow
just
bone. Yeah.
Yeah.
very much. So it's like really it's the sitters. It's like just the people who are allowing that magic to happen. That's all them. I just happen to be here.
Mhm. So if you were to give a message to people, you know, like I still like harshly grieve the loss of my dog. Of all things in the world, my dog died a year and a half ago, and I can just start telling a story about him, and I start sobbing. Like I grieve it so hard because he was my everything.
Mhm,
And so when you have those people who have had huge losses, whether it's your dog, your mother, your significant other, your best friend, and they're so in grief, and now they've heard like you're not necessarily going to hear from them because you haven't processed your grief. And I feel like grief is almost like a tether to you wanting them to be something that they aren't anymore, which is
mhm,
present for you. So they can't show up in the way that they really are because you're holding them in a space that they no longer inhabit.
mhm,
So what is the one message that aside from the fact that they need to process their grief, but that is that consistent message that comes through from the other side to those people who are like seriously grieving? So they're sitting there, they're disappointed because you didn't bring Alexander, my dog, through, you know.
mhm,
What would you say to me? Like, I'm very disappointed because I didn't get to hear from my dog today. What
mhm,
would you say to me in that moment about
mhm.
to bring me peace?
Right, right.
What's the truth there?
For me, I would tell people, I actually just had somebody, it's so funny, I had just had somebody who was experiencing this. And it's so much of like, you know, I I don't force anything. I don't ask, hey, you know, could you come through? It's only whatever spirit brings, whoever's stepping forward. That's all I can translate and all I can do.
Mhm.
Then I start talking with the sitter. What's really blocking the grieving? What is blocking you from like thriving and from moving forward? Um, I do want to tell this cool story because I just had somebody in, and this is again going back. I don't want to divulge a lot of
Mhm.
her life, but again, I used to be in law enforcement,
Mhm.
and I had somebody come in, and their former partner did not come through, and you could tell that she really wanted them to, but it was, you know, other people who chose to come through instead. And she starts describing the way that he had passed, and something felt familiar, and I was like, man, I feel like I know who this person is. And then I saw a badge, and I was like, was your partner in law enforcement? And she said yes. And then she had mentioned that it happened 8 years ago, and I'm like, where was the service at? And she told me, and I was like, I was at that funeral. And you know, this happened for her 8 years ago, and she's just struggling to continue. She's still struggling. And in that moment, it was like we had a moment and we both started crying, and we both were, and I was like, well, you know, I had a very short life in law enforcement, but I'm still, you know, I'm still part of the Blue family. I support you. I am here for you. What else do we need to do? And really, we started breaking down all these other things that was going on in her life. You know, it was like, especially since that incident that happened. Okay, well, there's other people around that situation we need to forgive. There's other things that happened that need to move on. You know, it was a very tragic incident. And so really that's when we start focusing back on self, of how can we just be better and do better and start to feel better and love ourselves so we can move forward with this grieving process, because some people just get so stuck. And that's when I feel like I take it away from having to bring anybody forward, because we're
Right.
not there yet. Right now we
Right.
need to focus on you and how you can help yourself heal. And like sometimes that's just the simple basics of eating better, getting exercise, getting sunlight. I mean, going back down to basics of
Mhm.
having to move forward and living a life without that person or animal.
Mm-hmm. That is so interesting. You brought up that her partner was law enforcement, passed 8 years ago. The two members of law enforcement that I was the closest to was my brother and the father of my child. And they were both law enforcement, and they both died 8 years ago.
Wow.
And one was a very, I'm so curious now, because one of them was a very public event that happened here.
Yeah.
And the memorial service was at the KCK, because he was a police captain. He was the captain. And so, and I'm like, is it?
Okay, we're going to have to talk later.
and I had a whole experience with him on the other side, and where spirit forced me to forgive the person who took his life. Like it was a forced situation. And that's so interesting.
Wow, Indira, we need to. You know what's so funny too is even though that was a very small part of my life, it comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I do galleries too, where for some reason, just like first responders, law enforcement, military come through a lot for me. I think as a medium, and that's why I encourage people to go to tons of different people, because they also come through through our personal life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So those who are law enforcement and military, they come through me often just because maybe I can relate, or maybe I can deliver messages through my experiences of knowing like, hey, we can connect that way.
Yes.
Well,
and my story of what happened to me, you very much could relate to as well. I feel like they say in medicine that toxicity takes the path of least resistance, but I think energy takes the path of least resistance. And so I can look around a whole room of readers, and I know that you're the one, because your energy takes the path of least resistance. And it says she can handle the message that you need to hear today, because she has the experience of sexual assault. She has the experience of law enforcement. She has the experience of all this stuff. And that's why when people ask me, when they go to fairs, well, who should I go see? I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. No, I need you to walk around. I need you to look in every face, and you just see where your heart is drawing you to. And that is where you need to go. It's not about who was the best for me.
People hate that answer. They're like, who do I go to? And who do I avoid? And I'm like, no. It doesn't work like that.
No.
You just walk around and you have to pick. Sorry, that's your prerogative.
Exactly.
Well, I think we just hit on something there, is that this is why we say it, because Noelle, if I couldn't have gone to I couldn't have gone to Bettina that day and said, I think I need a reading from you today. She wouldn't have been able to bring my dad through. She had no experience of my dad. Not that you had an experience of my dad, but you had the experience of sexual assault, which opens that up for you.
Right.
So can anyone be a medium? Can anyone do this work? Or is it
1,000%?
And so, okay, so the first question would be, why would they want to do it? And we already figured out that this is not a cool, glitzy, glammy job, that this is nitty gritty. This is hard work. But why would they want to do this, aside from the fact that it's going to kick their ass every day?
I slowly got into this just because I went to a fair, and I was never raised like seeing dead people and hearing from the other side. That just wasn't my path. And I had just always thought it was super cool. I grew up in that era of like Charmed, and I just thought this was something that you were gifted with, and you either had it or you didn't. And I went to a fair, and she was like, you totally have it. The way she said it too was what many people think was harsh, but this is how I like to hear it. I think this is why I needed to hear it, because I'm someone where you just got to say it straightforward. And she goes, you dress like it, but you don't do the work. And I'm like, oh, you are right there. That hurt, but you are correct. So funny. I was like, wow, I really needed to hear that day. And it just made sense to me, because the way she said that was, for me in fitness, if you want to grow a muscle, you have to work it out.
Yeah.
And that is how mediumship is for me. I was like, oh, and she goes, I could see you even here doing these fairs. Spoiler alert, I am now doing fairs. I was like, wow, you're good. She was like, that was these things I needed to hear, but that's what really got that fire under me of like, wow, if anybody can do this, then it's just like working out. So I went many different paths of, I put all the money into retreats, right? Like I spent all the money having people teach me things, but I will say the most developed, the most like messages that I've ever received are just me by myself and in my meditation and working with myself. That's what's like helped me grow the most. And then, if you want to be a medium, understand that it's going to take work, and understand that it's also breaking yourself down, breaking down that ego. I love the ego. It protects us. Our ego is meant to be, part of who we are as in this human experience. But when we have control over it, when we have this understanding of, oh, that self-awareness, that's my ego, we can start breaking that down and really getting connected with our higher selves. But when you start doing that, you really start seeing all of these things, your shadow side, all of these things that you hate about yourself, that you are insecure about, that's all going to start coming up for you. And these are the parts that we need to love. And that shadow side, that dark side, is what we really learn to love. So really, you start to learn, this isn't about other people. Like, we'll get there. This is about like myself and how my growth and my connection with spirit, because the better your connection with spirit is, the better your connection with everyone else. Because again, we're all one. So if you want other people to understand themselves better, you need to understand yourself better, and you have to practice what you preach. So it is having to do all of the work, because people will see right through it, and that's what you kind of have to be prepared for. But again, going back to seeing this as like a muscle, and if you want to grow your muscles, you have to tear the muscle fibers.
Yes.
And when you tear the muscle fibers, you rest, and then they come back together bigger and stronger. Same thing with mediumship, with how you meditate, how you work, how you your path on this journey. You will break, but you will come back together stronger.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
Well said, yes.
And yeah, that's for everything. That's for
Yeah,
everything.
It's for everything.
The meditation is a key part of this. People are so terrified of meditation. They're so terrified of sitting in the silence.
Yes.
But it is key to all of this work: mediumship, Akashic records, psychic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing people want to do. And honestly, that's the last thing people want to hear.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
It's so true, because they want this, like, oh, you're going to cast this spell and you're going to get into a fire and you're going to hold hands with all your friends. And then this is what,
Yeah.
and as much as, yes, that is a blast. That is not where the work is.
I really want to do that, and I'm always working.
That's like the cherry on the sundae,
Exactly.
You just like top it off, or the sprinkles. But
Love
there's
to
a whole cup of things you have to fill, first. So
Yes, exactly.
Where are we having those bonfires? those women dance. Where are we doing that?
I was never invited to one.
I'm channeling aliens all the time. What the crap?
I know.
Well, that's the next. So our next
I
podcast,
know.
that's what we'll do.
That's for real. Yes.
Start a fire.
Yeah.
And
People ask me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bettina.
No, I'm just saying, like, I piggyback on what you just said. People ask me as a teacher, like, well, can anybody learn the Akashic Records? I always say, yes, of course. But some people do not feel called to it. It's like anybody can learn how to play the piano, but maybe some people just don't want to. They just want to go to a concert and enjoy the show.
Exactly.
And, that's how you do it with everything we do in metaphysical. Some people, everybody can be a reader or a medium or an Akashic record reader, but some people don't want to do it. They just want to go to fairs, have a reading, go home, and, be done with that. And that's really all that is.
And that's what's so great about all of this, is that, like, you can grab whatever spirituality, whatever it is that you want. Let's say you don't want to be a medium. Totally fine. You just want to get it read. Well, you still should always be working on that connection with self, with your connection with spirit. My motto, or whatever I'm going to call it for Noelle Noire, is mind, body, and soul. And it's because I firmly believe that no matter what it is that you choose to do day by day within your life, it's we can thrive and be the best. And it's so important when you are connected physically, spiritually, and mentally. And when you work on these things, it all comes back to meditation. It comes back to
Yeah.
this sense of self, this inner knowing. And meditation, for people, like, when they think about it, it's so boring. But
Yeah.
it's only because you haven't reached that moment where you were like
Whoa.
connected. Like,
Yes.
when people hit that point of meditation where you're just like, oh my God, I could sit here forever, I don't want to come back down. That's when it's like, oh, that's what it is. I'm going to
Yeah.
keep seeking that now every time when I meditate now. And then you crave meditation.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's just like people just haven't quite gotten to that yet. And then they're like, but I have, monkey brain and I can't just focus and think. Well, that's fine. But that's the same with squatting. If I'm going to start squatting, I'm not instantly going to put 200 pounds on my bar. Like, I'm not going to, you have to. Fine, sit for 30 minutes, and you might be thinking of stuff the entire time. That's okay. The next day, go back, sit back down for 30 minutes, and it will get easier and easier. When I put weight on my bar, you start off with 40%. Let's just start off with a small amount, then you work your way up. That's same how it is with meditation, same how it is with growing mediumship. And unfortunately, it's not sexy and it's not cool and crazy, but it works. And I think
Yeah.
most mediums, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think everyone's going to say, how is your meditation?
Yeah.
I agree with that. Now, do you
Mhm.
offer online classes for people who, I know you offer in person practice. Do you offer online classes as well for people who are interested in, and do they go to nellenoir.com to find out about that? Or is there a website for that as well?
They can go to Noelle Noire. On there, they'll find my Instagram. Probably the best way is either there's our phone number. So you can contact me via text through that phone number or through my Instagram. And I have 3 of them. So pick whichever and just shoot me a message. And we can schedule a time and talk about, I've the packaging for prices if you want to do like 4 sessions or whatever the case is. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Guys, you
it
don't want to
is.
miss that. I mean, Noelle is the real deal. And if you have a chance to get a reading or get a class with her, don't miss out on that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want people to know, Noelle, about this? I mean, we've talked a lot about it's not sexy. It's it's hard work. And at the end of the day, is it rewarding for you? Is it the most rewarding thing that you feel like you've ever done other than being a mom, probably?
Other than being a mom, I was going to say, I think being the mom is obviously the most rewarding, but this has shown up in every part of my life. When I'm at the gym, I've had loved ones come through. When I'm doing nails, I have loved ones come through. And I asked Spirit a long time ago because I felt so like when I was in law enforcement, I was physically directly helping people. And then when I quit that, I felt like I wasn't. And they were like, no, nails is your catalyst. These things, I'm not on earth to do nails. We're not on earth to do these jobs. But to have this and to really work on this and this be like, a passion of mine is one of the most rewarding things because it's just made me a better person.
Wow.
It continues to make me a better person.
Well,
Yeah.
you're an amazing, amazing
Yes.
medium.
Yes.
I know you do amazing nails. I've yet to get in there, but that is my next thing. But you are an amazing medium, and I think that anyone who wants to study mediumship is something you and I have talked about a couple of times. Anyone who wants to study mediumship would be blessed to have you as an instructor because you
Yes.
are real, and you're not going to say, give me all this money and I'm going to give you all of this information. You're going to work with them and teach them the real way of like the real life way of doing this, which
Right.
is getting into the nitty gritty and taking those extra opportunities that's what I would teach my students is whatever experiences you have are the experiences that are going to come to you. If you start getting experiences that you don't have, then that is your catalyst from spirit to say, now I need to have experience in that.
Yes. I think if I were to have like one last thing, if there was something that I think one of the most important messages that I have is continue your education. and that is with, I don't care what it is you're doing. If you are a pancake flipper, continue your education, learn the chemistry behind it, learn the science behind it. I am somebody who coaches. I coach fitness. I have a coach. I have a medium. I'm working with another medium right now, who is coaching me.
Yes.
And we have a local, Jamie Collins. I have to shout out to Jamie Collins. She's,
Yes.
you know,
amazing.
oh my God, she's amazing. And she was a mentor of mine. I still call her my mentor. I just listen to her talk about anything, and I just learn stuff.
Right.
Always continue learning. That's where that ego comes in, of pulling that ego away. I think there's a lot of people who, you know, are more natural mediums than I ever was. And that just means that, fine, like, get some coaching, get some people who are going to be watching you do what you do. So it's like watching other people do it, practice, putting it into practice, and then having somebody watch you with practice, no matter what it is you're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
And I've got 3 mentors I work with. I'm always learning. And I also work with Bettina. She just taught me to read the Akashic Records a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
So
cool. Oh my God.
yeah.
I'll have to get a reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love that. I would
Well,
love
you're
that.
never done learning. If somebody says, I don't need to know anything else, they're lying or they're not doing it right. And I don't mean to offend anyone, but that's just how it is. You always learn, you know, always.
You'll never know it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, Noelle, this was wonderful. Can we have you
Wonderful,
back
yes.
sometime?
Oh my gosh, this was so great. I would love it.
This was great. Thank you so much.
I could
Thank
talk to you guys forever about all this.
I know.
Thanks. Well, stay in the studio because we need to connect real fast about what we talked about. Yeah.
Okay.
But everybody else, bye,
Yeah,
and thanks
bye,
for joining
guys.
us.